Welcome to the book club interview. My name is Scott Hollister, your host. Today is David Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done. Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. That's why David Allen created Getting Things Done. GTD is the work-life management system that helped countless individuals and organizations bring order to chaos. GTD enables greater performance, capacity, and innovation. It alleviates the feeling of overwhelm, instilling focus, clarity, and confidence. After decades of in-the-field research and practice of his productivity methods, David wrote the international bestseller, Getting Things Done. Published in over 20 languages, Time magazine heralded it as the defining self-help business book of its time. In 2015, he released a new edition of the book with new insights, updates, and discoveries about the world of getting things done and its many personal and professional applications. Today, David Allen is considered the leading authority in the fields of organizational and personal productivity. The David Allen Company oversees a certification academy and quality standards for global partners offering Getting Things Done courses and coaching around the world. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Dave. How are you doing today?
Hi, Scott. Delighted to be here. Happy for the invitation.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, let's have fun.
Let's do it. All right. Now, you've been called one of the world's most influential thinkers on productivity. So what does productivity mean for you, and what is the purpose of GTD?
Productivity is achieving desired results. You want to go on a vacation to relax and you don't relax, that's unproductive. So unfortunately, productivity has a bit of a baggage around the word, like work harder, stress faster, or whatever. And if that's your game, fine. But that's not really what productivity is about. It's about getting to that state. And here's a big secret, Scott, about getting things done. It's not so much about getting things done. It's about getting yourself in a state of mind where you're in the flow, where you're just present with whatever you're doing. Because that's the most productive state to hit a golf ball from, or cook spaghetti from, or fire somebody from, or just have a cool conversation from, is when there's nothing on your mind except whatever you want on your mind at that point. So as a kind of a freedom junkie myself, years ago, I just tried to discover, how do I keep myself free and clear in my head as my life got more complex? So that's really where this methodology came from, and really sort of what that's about.
Okay, so we're trying to get to that ready or optimal state. So how does one get there?
Well, first of all, you got to get stuff out of your head. Your head is a crappy office, and most people are trying to manage their life from their head. Your brain did not evolve to remember, remind, or prioritize or manage relationships between more than 4 things. New research. So
great.
You try to handle what the late great Peter Drucker called knowledge work, which means you actually have to think about the email. No email you're getting right now while we're talking is going to tell you what to do with it. You have to sit there and think. Sorry, don't shoot the messenger here, but thinking is going to have to be required to try to figure out, what the hell do I do with all this crap that's showing up in my day that I've let into my life with social media, with email, with the fast change in the world, and and all the expectations of my job, my company, my family, and whatever. In a sense, nothing new. They thought the telephone was going to blow up the world because it created such new input from people that they weren't used to. So this is nothing new as in a sense, something that you have to deal with and learn how to manage and then navigate through. It's just that the volume and the speed of it is so different now. So there's nothing new except how frequently things are new. So given that, building the algorithm about what do I need to think quickly about this email and not have to just go and close it up again and still have it hang there. Just that, I figured out that algorithm, and just that simple little algorithm, it has huge transformational implications for people if they start to manage their life that way, as opposed to sort of essentially playing victim to their stacks. They open up, they go, and close it up again. Or they pick up the thing, they pick up this thing from, look, I'm living in Amsterdam now. I don't speak Dutch very well, but I get a lot of stuff in Dutch, and I pick it up and I go, oh, God. In Google Translate, I'm going to have to, the tendency to put it back in my inbox is so huge. So training yourself to not do that, or not do that very long. So I'll do that very often during the day, but I won't let that sit around longer than 24 to 48 hours. So learning how to then deal with all these new inputs that come into our life and make the right decisions we need to make about them. So they're not hanging into our psyche. They're not grabbing our attention. They're not exhausting wind out of our sails, which is what most people do, simply because they're trying to, they think that without an external, they don't need an external system to alleviate that pressure. So I just figured out the algorithm. You need the external brain. Here's how you create the external brain, and here's the content you put in that external brain, so that your mind is then freed up to do what it does best, which is make good, intelligent, intuitive based choices off your options, not to try to remember what they are or even figure out what they are. You should have already done that.
Great. Now, I believe you call them open loops in the book.
When you say, I got my watch, it just broke. Oh my God, I gotta get it fixed. You got an open loop. Throw the watch away, decide you don't want a new one, or I want to get it fixed. That's an open loop. It's something that you need to go, what are you doing with that? And that's like get a new watch or get a life. It could be either and anywhere in between. But as soon as you make a commitment that I would, could, should, need to, ought to, might, want to do something about this, that's the stuff that you need to start to inventory, categorize, get out of your head, clarify, and stop your head from trying to bang around about that stuff. That's what's new in the world, in the last 100 years, is that the world is not as simple as there's a fire I need to light, there's a bear I need to run away from, there's a crying child I need to deal with, there's a thunderstorm coming up and I need to, cover the tent. That was about it. 100 years ago, it started to change. You started to get an email about the tent you might buy, or the two seminars down the street about how to raise your little crying child so they're not crying anymore. It's like, oh my God, So we have a whole very different world of inputs that do not have a simple algorithm about how to engage with it, like our world did just 100 years ago. So
Okay.
that's the new thing, is the requirement to have to figure out how to think about what's coming into your world and what you've let into your world.
Interesting. And can you explain the mind like water? Is that getting to that ready and optimal state when you have a place for? Okay.
Yeah. Water's not confused. If you haven't noticed, it deals very appropriately, more elegantly. It's kind of like when you get on an elevator with 4 people and a 5th person comes on, you will all reconfigure yourselves appropriately as far distant as you can from everybody else in the elevator. Just watch. So there's a natural kind of a get to some sort of an equilibrium state that happens automatically. And water does that, sort of kind of more obviously than anything else. And also water is highly powerful. You should look around, although it looks very fluid and very weak. So that was Bruce Lee's, sensei, who basically taught him about the mind like water state, because you need to be that flexible, that relaxed, that unreactive state, so that you can optimally focus on what's coming toward you. So that I stole that image. I did get a black belt, in my 20s in karate. So I stole that image because it's an appropriate image. It's kind of like, well, just being ready. Are you ready for what's coming toward you? Like, you got 2,000 unprocessed emails right now, Scott, in your email. You're not ready. Even a cool opportunity is going to press your button and bother you, simply because you got a whole lot of other stuff you don't know how to evaluate that against. Right? That's already in your world, but you haven't clarified, you haven't organized it, you haven't reviewed it and reflected on it. So this whole process I figured out was, how do I take this voluminous stuff that's with so regularly and change regularly and fast, and how do I keep current about that, so that when something new shows up, I can evaluate it against all the other options and make a quick decision, yes or no, or where does that go, or how do I deal with that? That's what I figured out, and pretty simple behaviors that everybody knows how to write things down. Everybody knows how to make a next action decision. Everybody knows how to keep a list. Everybody knows how to look at the list and decide which errands you need to run or what to buy at the store. So there are no behaviors here that are anything new for anybody. What's new is to be able to apply that to the more subtle and voluminous aspect of the things that then grab our attention, and then what we need to do about them, and what we need to decide about them, and how we organize it.
Great. So let's jump right into the 5 steps.
Yeah.
You have capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. So capturing all these open loops and all these things that are grabbing our attention, what's the best way to capture?
Pen and paper. Here, like right here on my desk. It's like, the high tech stuff. This is. Oh yeah. So. Okay. So there's a note I made, right before I got online with you, about what mic you were using, right? There it is.
Okay.
So I don't know what to do with it. I may go, look, Scott's a dummy. I'm not going to pay any attention. I may throw that away. I may decide to make a next action about that. I may create a project called make sure I upgrade or research a way to upgrade all of my, podcasting and interviews that what I'm doing. I don't know. I don't know yet. But what I'm going to do with that is take that note that I just wrote and throw it into my in tray. I'll decide later, because I don't have the time or bandwidth or interest to make that decision right now, but I don't have to because I have a trusted capture system. So that's the capture function. Grabbing something that might be useful, might be interesting, that I might need to decide or do something about, but I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to capture it. So if anybody takes notes in meetings, that's exactly what that is. You're just capturing potentially interesting, valuable information, but I haven't decided yet whether that's reference, trash, whether I need that later after the meeting or not, right? But that's what you're doing. You're doing a capture function. So capture for me is low tech, because I didn't have to turn anything on. I didn't have to create any clicks. Wi-Fi and batteries are not required. So for my capture function, 95, 98% of that is low tech, simply because that's not my permanent system. That's not what I want to access from multiple sources or whatever. I just need a placeholder for something that then I need to give myself permission to come back around and make decisions about. And that's where step 2 and 3. So that's the capture process of just grabbing stuff that might have my attention. But any way you can do it, as long as you get it out of your head, and as long as you park the placeholder somewhere that you trust you'll see sooner than later and decide what to do about it, if anything. Then step 2 and 3 are okay, what am I going to do about this note? Okay, how do I get rid of this note? I'm not going to put it back in my in basket. That's the key. If I go, stick it back, dead. Then this stuff piles up and my life becomes an overwhelming sense of undecided, unclarified stuff. I'm going to have to decide, okay, David, come on. So what are you going to do about that? So I may decide, well, that's a research the web about that AT220 mic. Okay. Can I do that? There's a less, probably. In which case I'll probably do that. So I can just take a look at what it is, see if it sounds cool, see what the interviews of it are, and either order it or go, yeah, screw it, I'm not going to do it, or this way. But that may also trigger, oh, wait a minute, I might want to research getting a better mic than this Apple earbud set. And then I may decide to make a project about that, in which I'll do something else about it. But the note was just a placeholder, and then I had to move through step 2 and 3. Step 2 is to clarify, what exactly is that, David? Is there a next action on that? Can you finish it in 2 minutes? Is it just reference? Is it trash? Is there a project now that just... And then I need to go through that thinking process and clarify the results of that thinking. And then if I can't finish all that in a moment, I need to organize some reminder. Okay, where am I going to put that project? Well, I got a list of projects. I got 30 or 40 of them right now. I stick them in a project called R&D, audio set for podcasts, right? And then what's the next step? Oh, geez, I don't know. Let me surf the web about that. And so I may then put a note on my online apps that I need to do when I'm online to just go surf the web about that. Then I get to throw this away, because now I've organized that step 3 into my trusted system of lists and reminders of work that I've decided I needed to do, when I have time and focus to do that. So that's the step 1, 2, and 3. I captured, I clarified, I then organized those results. And then I need to review it when I'm online, have time. I need to see, oh yeah, that's something I need to do. I need to take a look at whether the A220 microphone is something I need to go research and spend some time, take a look at it or whatever. And then I reflect on that, and then looking at all of that as well as all the other things I have on my plate, of commitments that I might need to evaluate. Step 5 is engage. So then I either go do that, I go take a nap, I go have a beer, have a glass of wine, or whatever I do, and then decide that's the trusted thing to do, but I'm not missing it. I'm current. And so that's the 5-step process. I didn't make that up, Scott. I identified it. That's how you get your kitchen clean. That's how you get your meeting under control. You identify what's off here. What do we need to clarify and have an action about to get it on instead of off? How do we organize those results in some appropriate, context? How do we then make sure we step back and take a look at the larger picture now that we've, captured, organized it, so that then when we engage, we're on. We don't have to have our attention on anything else. So I just identified that 5-step process, and each one of those stages has its own best practices and their own tools. It's not one thing. It's actually a holistic model of how do you get your kitchen and your consciousness under control.
Great. Now, when you engage, do you prioritize, that to-do list? Do you say, here's my top priority, I have to set a time in the day? Or is it, when you have time and try to fit it in?
Yes. All the above. I just look at the whole thing. You go, what do I feel like doing right now? So ultimately, once you get your head clear and clean, and you feel comfortable that you've been reviewing this regularly, and part of what we uncovered is you better be doing at least what we've identified as the weekly review, or once a week. You better have everything current, clean, kept up, and so forth. So you take a look at that. You don't have time to think. You need to have already thought. When you get off this podcast with me, Scott, you don't have time to think. You need to have already thought, right? So that then at that point, given what's showing up in your world, whether it's from kids or life partner or the email or your stomach or God knows what shows up that then starts to drive, what has your attention. You can make a trusted choice about whether you take a nap or whether you need to clean up email or whether you need to spend some quality time with a kid or a spouse or, whatever. And that's the whole idea of making this sort of extra. It doesn't get rid of your challenges. It makes it a whole lot easier to grapple with them from the driver's seat instead of the victim mode, being driven sort of by latest and loudest.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a way that I'm sure you've streamlined the process and you're always continuing to grow because that's the type of person you are. Now, does your list ever get so large that you get overwhelmed, or is that where the weekly review comes in, where you're, like you said, you're cleaning up and you're continuing to prune?
That's another kind of yes on all of that. A lot of it depends on the volume, speed, and the nature of what you're doing. Now, come on, I'll be 70 years, so I've structured my life so there's not that many. I don't have that many operational projects and things that I have to handle on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. I still have a lot of stuff to do, so I'm still looking at that, but I don't need to look at that at quite as a regular, frequent recursion as a lot of people might need to if they're much more involved in an operational life in that way. There were times where I needed to review my whole life 3 times a day because it was coming at me so fast. It's like, oh my God, wait a minute. Because when you're dealing with what's in front of you, you have to, by nature and by efficiency, filter out everything else. Right. So you're down in the weeds. I need to work with the weed. Just to make sure it's the right weed. So you need to make sure that you're, sort of on some consistent basis looking at enough to say, that's a weed I need to get down into. But when you're down into that, you don't want to be focused on anything else. When you stop focusing on that weed, okay, boom, the ability to shift horizons rapidly, relative to your commitments and relative to your systems. But you can't do that in your head. Your office is such a crappy office, it can't do that. People have 30 to 100 projects. Get tires on my car, hire the vice president, launch the ad campaign, research a new mobile phone thing, fix the tooth that my dentist just said, You know, people actually really identified all the things that have grabbed their attention that they have any commitments about. You know, that's something that you need to make sure you've got the internal brain that's captured, clarified, and organized all that, so that some part of you can then start to trust your moment. Okay, let me look at all that. Screw it, I'm gonna take a nap. And that's a high nap, you know, as opposed to let me take a nap to avoid my life. I'm taking a nap because nap is the best thing to do in my life. Those are two very different naps. You know, believe me. So that's what this methodology was about. Okay, how do we create those behaviors essentially that make sure that those are trusted choices, not hoped for choices? And that's not free. You don't get there by meditating or drinking. I know I do both. You know, so but those for very different purposes. But you can only get clear by getting clear. The way out is through, guys. I mean, you got to sit down and figure out. Wait a minute, what did I just commit to about that AT220 $120 mic? What is that? What am I going to do about that? I've got to deal with that. I can't just ignore that and let that pile up into some huge amorphous pile of undecided stuff. Even little stuff. I mean, come on, that's not, you know, probably life mission critical. Though I don't know right now. Maybe it is. Could well be. The quality of the audio on these podcasts is going to become that much more important, given the way the world is moving, in terms of how we're communicating with each other and how I promote my brand and my work and my methodology and so forth. So it's like, who knows? So I don't want to have to make that decision right now. What I want to make is a decision to get in control of that commitment or potential commitment, so that I don't have to be bothered by it. And I can know what I need to do next about it and to move that forward. So I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to know how to move on it. And that's what I really figured out. And that's unique, because that you're not born doing that. And you don't do that naturally. You actually have to train a cognitive muscle to get, what to do about this thing. You know, most people haven't trained themselves what to do about this, so I can tear this up and throw it away. Because that's the end game here, is to get rid of the placeholder, because I've now decided what it means, where this goes in my life, and I don't need the placeholder anymore. So that's the difference between capture, which is stage 1, and organize, which is stage 3. I don't know what I'm going to organize about that. I'll decide that later. But I know that I don't have to think about that now. My brain is relieved of that pressure. I didn't even remember I'd even done that. It was just a few minutes ago before we started the podcast. Right?
That's great. Now, can you explain the power of the next action decision? Now, is that a part of the organizing process, the reflection, or
no? That's the clarification process. Wait a minute.
Clarification. Okay.
Is this something that's fun? And it's something. What does moving look like, and where does it happen? Right. Anybody listening to this, what's on your mind right now? Everybody listening to this, by the way, has probably had their mind move somewhere else while you and I have been talking that has nothing to do with what you and I are talking about. Right? So if they really had this process down, they would have written that down so that they could then focus on us if they wanted to. Not that they had to, but if they wanted to listen to us, their mind got distracted. I think they're not appropriately engaged with yet. So they need to have captured that thought and then decided, well, wait a minute, what's the very next step on this, if there is one? So that decision-making process, again, doesn't happen by itself, and it's powerful. Most people won't make that decision because it's the perfectionism that sits inside of everybody. I want to know how to do this perfectly before I figure out what even to do first. You know, and it's like, write a book, great. Write a shitty first draft. That's the only coaching any writer has ever given anybody. Write a shitty first draft. Because you won't know until you start to write it down and start to engage with it or whatever. So the whole idea is engage. You know, the old, Top Gun, Tom Cruise, Maverick, engage. It's like everybody's freaked out to start to move on their stuff. Well, what does movement look like, and where does it happen? Email us in, there's a website to serve, something to talk to your life partner about, something to buy at the store. What's next? And what's so surprising to me, I mean, 35 years of doing this work, is how people resist that decision. What's next? Getting a dog for your kids, researching should they take karate classes, divorce, what am I going to do with my life? How about my life insurance? What am I going to do about that? Yada, yada, yada. And most people, it takes 1 to 6 hours just to identify the things that are rattling around in their brain. Most people have no idea how many things they've committed to that are banging around in there, because they can only remember one at a time, and usually they'll remember them at 3 o'clock in the morning when they can't buy cat food, can't do anything about their life, right? And that's because they're trying to use your head as their office, and it's a crappy office. It wasn't designed to do that.
No, it's great to know. So when I got your book, I printed out the actual process because I'm a visual guy and I like to see it.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Sure.
I actually framed it and have it right here by my desk. So we have the stuff, as you call it, goes in the in basket, and you figure it out. And is it actionable? Yes or no? So can you explain? Let's just start with no. You have a trash, a someday maybe, or a reference.
Yeah. AT220 mic. Right? Is it trash? After we get off, I go, I'm not ready to look this up right now. You know? Yeah, I'm sounding fine on my Apple earbuds. You know, come on, I've heard a gazillion recommendations about mics. You know, trash. I may go, that's a cool possibility. So I'm going to some sort of a database I have of, hey, potential microphones I might want to get, and just stick it in there. Then I'll tear this away. I may go, you know, I need to look more into what this thing is. So I may just take a next action. It might be a 2-minute action where you go, let me just do a quick Google search on AT220 mics, see what shows up. Then based upon what I see there, I may make some other decision at some point. Or I may say, yeah, I trust Scott that he made a great decision about this. I'm going to get this. So then I make a project called Set Up New AT220 Mic. And then I go, so what's my next action on that? Okay, let me surf the web and see where in Amsterdam is the coolest place that I can order this and actually get one. And then set that up as an action.
So would you use the 2-minute rule with that one? If the next action?
Yeah. If I could do it in 2 minutes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, has the 2-minute rule kind of helped you, you know, to kind of get those things?
It's transformed thousands of people's lives, you know, over the last 30 years. I've had executives tell me that was worth the total price of admission in terms of everything they paid me to coach them or whatever, just for the 2-minute rule if they didn't have it already, which says, look, once you decide. See, most people won't decide what the next action is, so they can't implement the 2-minute rule until they decide what the next step is. Once they decide what the next step is, oh, let me just email Vincent about that. I can do that in a second. Let me just surf the web and see how much that costs. And that just takes 2 minutes. It adds 6 months to your life, just in terms of them becoming more Teflon as opposed to, you know, that's something I might want to do. Let me stick it over there. Come on, you know, grow up, make a decision. Step, and if you can do it in 2 minutes, just do it right then. And that's just simply the efficiency algorithm. It says, look, if you're ever going to do it at all, and it takes less than 2 minutes, it will take you longer to organize it and track it and review it than it would be to finish it right now. So that's why the 2-minute rule kind of showed up. That was pretty much the dividing line between, look, if you could finish it now, it'll take you less effort than trying to track it and review it later.
Smart. Efficiency. Now, if it's a multi-step project, how does that look? You know, let's just say this, you know, you got to purchase it, you got to review it, you got to get it, you got to set it up.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
First of all, I'm going to identify what the end game is. Optimal audio podcast. So if I made that decision right now, which I might, if I did, I said, okay, that goes in my project list. So now I have the goal. I have the goal line. I know where the goal is, right? What's the next step? Okay, well, I decide this, that, or the other. If I go, well, here are things I might need to consider about this. Now we're doing project planning, collateral thinking around the outcome. That's where I would probably click open Mind Manager, which is my software for mind mapping, and I just started mind map on, okay, audio. And then I'd create a link called here's options, here's whatever, and I'd start just generating, collateral material that might be relevant to getting to this outcome. Right? So those are actually three things. What's the desired outcome? What's the next step? And if there's anything in between, and I might want to capture that somewhere, but I can't trust that I remember automatically, then I need to create some sort of project support material or project support, information that I park somewhere, however you do that. And that could look like anything. So just somewhere that I keep all the data relative to this thing. So if I take the next step and I'm not sure what's next, let me go back to my collateral and see, what else might I want to do given all the thoughts I've had about this project.
Great. Now, in terms of calendar, I didn't know this before I read your book, but what should be on there? I got it with action steps, and I had everything like reminders on there, and it was just chaos.
Yeah. Well, your calendar should be the hard landscape for the day. What are the things that you have to do or need to know on that day? Mm-hmm. Right. If you don't have that, if it includes anything else, then you have to keep every time you look at your calendar, you have to keep, wait a minute, what's real, what's not here? And a lot of things get disturbed or otherwise. And I need to know the night before, the first thing I look at is my calendar to know how long I can sleep. Because I'm a sleep addict. I love to sleep as long as I can. So, last night I looked at, I had a podcast interview this morning with Australia, and I had to be up at 8 o'clock to do that. Early for me, because a lot of my stuff is with California, so I'm usually a later night person. So anyway, so just being aware of that, and then with you, at 2 o'clock my time, and I've got another podcast I have to do it in a couple of hours. So I looked at that to see, okay, here's the hard landscape. There's nothing else on that calendar except that. So I know I need to now organize my day around that and to know sort of how to frame that to begin with. All my other possibilities, I've got 10 errands to do. I've got 14 things to do online. I've got probably 40 things to do, just to do on my at computer list. I've got stuff to talk to my wife about. So I've got, most people have 150 to 220 things they need to do in and around the have-tos that they have to do. But I need to make a clear distinction between those things. So I need to know, well, I'd look at, let me look at my calendar right now. If I looked at my calendar right now, this week, I'll find some examples. For instance, tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow is June 1st on my calendar. I don't know when you're publishing this. So I've got the place that services our bicycles, and we live in Amsterdam, so that's critical stuff. I ordered a new bike that's due tomorrow. So that's just a piece of information I need to know. I have a manuscript that I need to review because I promised a guy that if I had the time at all, I'd try to get back to him with some sort of endorsement or some context of that. And so that's a piece of information I need to know about tomorrow, as well as I have a new sort of monthly discourse that I read from my sort of inspirational source that I, get motivational stuff from. And every month I get a new one. So tomorrow is the first of that month. So I have a reminder to do that. So that's on my calendar. There's nothing else on my calendar except those. So I have time-specific stuff, actually, which tomorrow I have to do nothing. Then I have day-specific stuff that I need to do. And none of that was stuff I had to do. And then I have day-specific information, and all three of those things were that. I'm now aware that the bike I ordered should be due by now. I also am reminded that I need to review something coming up toward me. So those are the three things that are on my calendar. And I can look back and, last Monday was when I had some blue jeans that were altered in terms of their whatever at a tailor. So They should have been done by then. So that was just information I needed to know. So my calendar is full of really important information. So when I look at it, that's the stuff I need to do, stuff I need to know about that day and on that day, and nothing else. So that I can make sure those are real clean, and that's real clean information for me. So I feel comfortable at that. All the other stuff, hundreds of things that I could do are on other lists that I'll see when I have the time and energy and interest to take a look at those as options.
Okay. So you check off the thing.
Short question, but that's
yeah. But it's great to be specific. I mean, that will change your life right there, because if you have too much on your calendar, too many open loops, everything's pulling and you get nothing done. And I know definitely a lot of listeners are struggling. I think everybody's really struggling with time management. You don't get more of it, but you have to see what works and find a system like GTD to get through the weeds and focus on what you need to get done.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of, you've trained and coached many thousands of people. So what's the first thing you do when you get a new client?
Introduce myself and hope they like me. And, basically, how much time do we have? And what are their objectives about all this? But if you're talking about the real operational thing, what they do is say, yeah, David, I want to get more space, more clarity, more in control or whatever. The first thing we do is actually work through, I describe what this process is, and then we do a hands-on implementation of the process. So step one is capture. So the first thing we do is first thing we're going to do is we're going to capture everything that's got your attention. Anything that's not on cruise control in your life and work. We're going to capture a placeholder for all those things. So first thing I do is look around. If I'm at their workspace where they do most of their work, so what doesn't belong here permanently? What's stacked up on your desk? What's under the desk, out of the desk, in the drawer, pocket, whatever, in your briefcase? What doesn't belong here permanently? Because that represents something you've got an open loop at. So that's a pretty graphic, immediate way to start to capture what's got people's attention. What doesn't belong in your purse, your pocket, your wallet, your briefcase? So if I ask you, Scott, right now, if you pull out your wallet right now, or your pack or whatever, what's been in there? What besides money has been in there longer than 2 days that doesn't belong there permanently? Right. So that's the first place we'll start, because those are things that got your attention. They're yelling at you, whispering at you, screaming at you, or you've gone numb to because you don't like the noise. So we just grab all that stuff and throw it into your in tray. First of all, we'll get you an in tray if you don't have one. Most people don't even have a physical space to start to collect all that stuff that still needs other decisions made about. So we get you an in basket. We get you a big stack, and so we throw all that stuff in. There are notes that represent those. You might say, "Oh my God, I just inherited a file cabinet from the guy I just replaced, and it's still over there in the corner." So we don't put the file cabinet in your in basket. We just write a note called file cabinet, remove, redo, or whatever. We throw that in their in basket. And then we say, okay, anything else, Scott, that's got your attention that we haven't captured in this bucket yet? Oh yeah, I got to call Bill Smith. We write that down, throw it in your in basket. Oh yeah, I need cat food. Write that down, throw it in your basket. I need life. We write that down, throw it in your in basket. Doesn't matter. Small, big, little, doesn't matter. What's not on cruise control? That's all we're after. And by the way, anybody listening to this who's had your mind go somewhere else besides what Scott and I have been talking about, that's what we would capture. Because where your mind went was something you have not yet made the appropriate decision about what you need to do, or haven't parked in a trusted system. So we don't have to go far. We're just going to look. What's on? Oh yeah, my mom, elder care. Oh, see, I just write it down, throw it in the basket. I just got an email about this thing, opportunity, and I don't know what to do. Write it down, throw it in the basket. So we grab it all. By the way, that takes 1 to 6 hours for most people, just to identify. Not to clarify, not to organize, not to do anything with it, but just to grab it, just get it out of their psyche, because you don't remember one at a time. Around that are open loops in there. That's the first thing we do, is as best we can grab or identify placeholders for all those open loops. And again, it takes as many hours as it takes. And so so that's step one, is just getting that into one place. But then you can't leave it there. Even that will be healing for a whole lot of people. They never even done that exercise before. But if you leave it there, you might create compulsive list makers that are just making lists all over God and creation, and that doesn't help either. You got to throw all those lists into your in tray and then get your in tray emptied within 24 to 48 hours. And the way you get it empty is not by finishing everything that's in there, but by clarifying and organizing what's in there. And then dealing with it so that your input is now clean for the next new inputs that are coming in terms of how you do that. So then the next, usually 2 days it usually takes to work one-on-one with somebody just to implement the process for themselves. First of all, just to identify the stuff they've got attention on. And then secondly, to go through the clarified and organized process where they then go through each one of those items one at a time. Gee, what's your next action? Is this actionable? Yes or no? If it is, what's the next action? Will one action finish this? No. Then what's the project? And then making sure they have some sort of a list management system that they trust they can impart the results of that thinking in. And that takes the rest of usually a day and a half to actually set that up. But most people, that's not wasted time. Most people, it's like, oh my God, those 2 days changed my life just to walk through that process. But I didn't make any, I didn't add anything. I didn't give them any coaching about what they should be doing. I didn't do any of that. All I did was start to identify what's banging around and what do you need to do with that so that you appropriately engage with whatever that is. So that's the algorithm I discovered. Because I've done, substantive consulting. Hey, where are you going in your business? What do you need to do? And therefore, so I have other models that would deal with, okay, what you potentially should be doing or how best to think about strategy, et cetera. But this process is so powerful itself because once people get their head clear, they're much clearer about their own strategies. It kind of shows up organically.
Amazing. So what's the most common problem you see with people who struggle with productivity?
They're not focused on outcome and action thinking. They're a victim. I'm bothered by my neighbor who thinks that they more of my property. Great, what's your outcome? Your mom's birthday's coming up. What's the outcome? You just find out you had to be responsible for your mom's or your dad's elder care. What's the outcome? And most people won't sit down and go, okay, wait a minute. What's my desired outcome? And then what's my next action? And that outcome and action thinking that's the zeros and ones of productivity to begin with. What are you trying to produce? And how do you allocate or reallocate your resources to make it happen? That is productivity, right? That is the effective productivity algorithm, if you will. And most people have a lot of stuff in their life and work they don't do that thinking about. And that's the biggest hindrance to their productivity. If you want to go on a vacation to relax, if that's your prime directive and your prime outcome, and you don't relax, that's unproductive. So what do you need to do to relax, right, about this vacation? Well, I need to set the vacation. I need to make sure this is all handled. I need to make sure that whatever, I don't know, what I need to make sure I've scheduled massages appropriately for me and my life partner, and I've, yada. So they don't focus on outcomes. They don't focus on action steps because you're not born doing. You didn't hop out of your mom and go, "Gee, mom, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the next step? Is that yours or mine?" That's a learned behavior, and it's a learned behavior. A lot of people, they know what it is, and it's not a new skill, but it's an applied cognitive focus that most people avoid like the plague about a lot of stuff. And then that creates the negative result of the feeling of overwhelm.
Good to know. Now, let's take it right from the book. What's the next action step after reading your book? So, outcome-based, we want to organize our life. And from what I grabbed from it was a filing cabinet with a label maker. After we're purging everything in all our old files.
Yeah, well, part 2 of my book was actually walking people through my one-on-one coaching process that developed over many years and thousands of hours with people. So that is a step-by-step thing to do, about this. So there are steps there, and you don't have to do all of them. Come on, none of this is like running with scissors. There's nothing dangerous about any of this. If you just write a few more things down than you would, or make a few next action decisions sooner than later about stuff, it'll improve your life. So this is not like God, you have to do all this to make anything work. Any of this will work. But if you really want to be pristine about this, the first thing to do is to set aside a good day or day and a half, or maybe 2 days if you can afford it, and say, I'm going to actually implement this process. Get a big stack of blank paper, a nice writing pen, an in basket, and go through step 1, write everything down on a piece of paper that's got your attention, and throw it in your in basket. And then once you've done that, which will take 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. By the way, that means you need to walk into every closet, every drawer in your desk, walk around your house, walk around your company, walk around, there's all kinds of stuff. And in my book, I have a whole, incompletion triggered list. So, okay, projects that should be started, projects that have been started that haven't finished. What are the things you need to talk about to people? What do you, So I got a good trigger list that'll help spring some of these things out that most people have ignored or tried to stuff down or forgotten that they committed to, but they're still real. So that process, that's the first step of the process. That's what somebody ought to do if they wanted to start to get really clear about it. And then they walk through the process of then emptying out that stack of all the stuff they created by going through each one and saying, okay, what is this? Is it actionable? Yes or no? If no, it's toss it, tickle, or defile it. If it's a non-action on it, then you either, I don't need this, so just throw it away. I just need to keep this. Great. You need to make sure you have a good place to file it, and that's back to your point about the filing system. You need a quick and easily accessible filing system, both digital and paper-based, so you can file it fast. Get it. Don't have it lie around to file. You'll never do it. So you need to file it fast, or you might need to trigger it. Say, in 2 weeks I need to be reminded about this again. Great. So you need to have a system to be able to do that. If it is actionable, then what's the next action? Is that an email to send, a phone call to make, whatever? And then if you can do it in 2 minutes, you should do it right then. If not, you then need to have a system and then organize that into some sort of a system of reminder lists, errands to run, stuff to talk to people about, stuff you need to handle, whatever. So that's, setting up that personal system of lists, in some sort of trusted systems. You can be reminded when you go out for errands, where do I see all the errands I've come up with that I need to do? Where is that? And that can be low tech. You can keep a file folder of errands you need to run with paper in it. You could keep a paper planner with a page called errands to run, with just the list on there. And you could there are hundreds of list managers out there that have been modeled on my system, that you could buy and install if you like digital. So you can go see your errands list on your iPhone or your Android or whatever you're looking at. So that's basically what the process is. It's not rocket science. It's basically what everybody does in some way, to some degree, whenever they're trying to get control of their life. But we just give you a model about how to do that pristinely and keep it current and make it complete. That's transformational. You can do that.
Of course. So how do you make it fun to file? What's a good tip?
Oh, come on. Well, first of all, you need a label maker. You must, and here's actually my favorite now, which is the Dymo PNP.
Yep.
Plug and play. I just plug this in, and all I do, if I want to make a file called AT220, all I have to do is on my Mac here, hit Dymo, and I type it in, and then I hit click, and it runs out, and I click it off, and I go, label. So labels, there's a magic to them. I've never been able to totally explain it to anybody except people who have labelers. They go, I understand. Once you actually create a printed label for anything, it makes such a difference in terms of how you manage that and how you organize it. So, yeah, labels are great. You can't beat them. Yeah. Never had anybody start to label things that went back to handwritten ever.
I'll be a firm believer. For the first couple of days, I hand wrote it, and then you open your filing cabinet, you can't read it fast enough, and then ordered it. Game changer, like you said, never went back.
Not only that, when it's handwritten, it looks funky and informal, and it's very formal and real stuff that's in there. So there's something about the disconnect between a handwritten label and a typeset label. Again, I don't know that I fully understand why all of that, but I know it's true.
Yeah, and it goes miles too when you're sitting down with someone, that if you bring a professional folder that is labeled, oh, it sets you apart.
Yeah, it really does.
Now, I know. Now, I have a couple of bonus questions before we wrap things up. James Fallows wrote in the foreword for the second edition, he says, "Two of my tests for a book are whether I remember it in a month or two, or after I've read it, and whether it will affect my view of the world. Both tests, getting things done is, for me, a success." And that's how it was for me. Like we were speaking before, it was transformational. I always recommend this book if your life is just unorganized mess and you're bouncing from idea to idea. This will just set such a strong foundation, and I keep referring back to it. And I read a book a week, and some things I can't remember, but this one has always stuck with me for the last few years. So, how does it feel to transform so many lives? Do a lot of people reach out and thank you?
Yeah, I get them every day. So Scott, yeah, that's been the grace of my life. That somehow I was able to stumble onto something that no matter who I talk to, we're teaching kids 7, 8, and 9 years old. I've never seen any cultural difference, any gender difference, and this is such a human condition that this addresses for people to have a busy life that want to, manage that optimally, with the least amount of stress and pressure. And so, that's been a huge grace in my life. Interestingly, it's not just the people out of control. The funny thing about this is the people who are most attracted to this are the people who need it the least. They're already the most productive, most proactive, most already system-oriented. They already know systems are great. I'm sure when you ran across this, you already had your systems. You weren't a systemless person. You'd already tried this, that, and the other thing. You already were grappling with it, but you were just, your own creativity and productivity were moving out beyond what your systems could manage really well. So that's the grace of my life, is I get to deal with some of the best, brightest, and busy people on the planet. If somebody that is not even aware of the value of a system, they're going, whatever. And, I don't even want, they're not interested in what I'm doing because they're not even aware that they have an improvement opportunity that they should be. But most people have thrown themselves out of their own comfort zone simply because of their own productivity. So now you've created more, you've invested more, you're now involved in a lot more things than you ever were before, but your systems haven't caught up with you. So that's a lot of that's probably the most popular population that I deal with are those folks. So I get the best and brightest. Howard Stern told me this changed his life. You get a Will Smith or a Robert Downey Jr. that then give my book to their friends, because of course they're managing their own huge businesses in addition to their own acting careers and radio careers and whatever. But Howard hired my coach. She's his COO now, because it just so changed his ability to be able to learn to paint and have room to do that, as well as manage series and all of his radio businesses. So I can say that publicly because he said it publicly. Mm-hmm. So I didn't break any confidences by sharing those things. But that it's those of you listening to this who are already productive. Hey, come on, guys. There's a whole new level of game to give you more space, because that's what you're after. You don't need time. You need room. Mm-hmm. You're probably already filled up to here with your own creativity. You just need more room to do more cool stuff and still not give up the cool stuff you're already doing. So that's the promise that this holds, I think, for you and others like you, Scott.
Yeah, leveling up. Now, what was it like to do a TED Talk?
Oh, some of the toughest things I've ever done. Try to get this message down to 18 minutes. Are you kidding? Yep. How crazy is that? Because give me 2 days and I can sort of convince somebody about this, but give me 18 minutes and it's like, oh my God, what do I by the Mark Twain or whatever. It says, look, you know, if I can write a 10-page letter, that's easy. If you want me to put it in a paragraph, it's going to take me 2 years to figure that out. So trying to simplify this and get a message. And obviously I couldn't, I just finished my third TED Talk in Curacao. But trying to get that down, getting a piece of the message so that it's not, a piece of the message is not the whole message, but to make a piece of the message still whole in itself. That was a big challenge, trying to figure that out.
Interesting.
So, so trying to figure out an 18-minute version of what is this, because this is such a huge message about how you manage all the aspects of your life. And any one of these could take, it could take 2 years for just people to change the habit about getting stuff out of their head. So how do you squeeze all that down into some sort of thing? But very valuable and very useful and fun. So,
great.
Why not?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. You want to tell listeners where they can find out more about you and the programs that you do offer?
Hey, just go to gettingthingsdone.com. We've now shrunk ourselves to an IP licensing company pretty much. So all I do is supporting partners that we've certified their master trainers around the world to be able to deliver our work in a trusted way. So Vital Smarts in the U.S., is an exclusive distributor of our trainings. If you go to our website and click on our partners, you'll see where public trainings and all kinds of trainings around the world are being done with this methodology. So that's a lot of what I'm doing, is just managing those partnerships. We're in 60 countries now, so wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this, you'll probably find somebody who's doing some work in your area, in your language maybe even, because the book's in 30 languages. So it's out there around the world. So that's a lot of what I'm doing right now. So gettingthingsdone.com, go check that out. You will find resources that will link you to our free newsletter, some free articles you can sort of tap into about whatever this is. And get my new edition of the book. It came out in 2015 in English anyway, and in several languages too. We have a new book, Getting Things Done for Teenagers. It's coming out in July in the U.S.
Great. Because
so many people have said, "Oh my God, I wish I'd learned this when I was in high school," or "I wish my kids could get this," or whatever. And so we've finally been able to create some resources to pull that together and create that book. So just watch for that on your radar.
Of course. It's great to know. I think that it's a foundational success, especially for someone middle school and high school. As a former teacher myself, and I used it, with my students. So they got the preview before even the book, but I'll be sure to recommend it to the school once it comes out. So
yeah,
definitely. Well, thank you so much, David, for being on today. I had a blast, and like I said, I always recommend your book if anybody really needs to become more productive and organize their life. It's something that you'll read and it'll change your life, and you'll keep it forever in one form or another. So thank you, and I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, Scott. No, thanks for the invitation. This was fun. Yeah,
thank you. You too.
Best wishes.
And that concludes our interview with author David Allen. After decades of in-the-field research and practice of his productivity methods, David wrote the international bestseller, Getting Things Done. It is currently published in over 28 languages. Time magazine heralded it as a defining self-help business book of its time. In 2015, Dave released a new edition of the book with new insights, updates, and discoveries about the world of getting things done and its many personal and professional applications. People ask me all the time, Scott, what's your favorite book? This is one of my favorite books. I believe it is foundational towards your success, whether that's in business and real estate, or even if you just want to do better in your current job. This book will help you get you there. It will help you focus. It'll help you clear the clutter in your life so you can get through the weeds to focus on what you really need to accomplish in that time. We all want that better life. We want to be able to relax on vacation. Dave teaches you how to do so in this book. Highly recommend you get a copy if you don't have one already. That's it for today. We'll see you next. My name is Scott Hollister, your host. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Facebook.